This is a very hot topic. Do women have equal rights as men in ISKCON? I was in Srila Prabhupada's room in Los Angeles, 1972, and one journalist asked Srila Prabhupada, what about the women in your movement? You say that they're less intelligent. What do you have to say about this? What is their position in your movement? And Prabhupada said, anyone who comes to this movement becomes most intelligent. Otherwise, how can they come to this movement? How can they accept this philosophy in their life? So anyone who comes to this movement becomes most intelligent. So Prabhupada actually has written in his books, and I'm sorry I don't know exactly where this quote is found, but it's in a purport, where he said, the previous acharyas spoke from the man's point of view, because that was the culture of the time. Only the men were educated and could hear philosophies and like that. So they were speaking from the man's point of view. Prabhupada didn't speak from the man's point of view. So he said, in this interview, he also said, my women disciples are doing everything the men are doing. They preach, they do pujari work, they lead. And at that time, I was leading. At that time, I had a Sankirtan party of ladies, and I was leading the we went traveling. We had a little temple. I was the president for a little while. I gave classes, I led kirtans, I played mridanga, and this was going on. That is what Prabhupada wanted. Whatever you do best, you do it for Krishna. Do it to propagate my movement. This is what he wanted, to propagate this philosophy. Whatever you do best. This is what he wanted for all of his disciples. So it is supposed to be. But there is an element, and there was an element. At one point they said, you can't play mridanga, you can't lead kirtan, you can't go, you can't preach in, like lecture and like this. And this was very hard and devastating. Not just for the women disciples, but at some point there was even Prabhupada disciple men who were told not to preach in the other guru zones and this and that. So ISKCON has gone through growing pains. It's a young movement, and it's gone through growing pains. We still have much room for improvement. And I would say, instead of the focus being on what is our mundane roles, what is our ashram, our varna roles in life, because Prabhupada was not big on varna roles. Lord Chaitanya was not big on varna roles. When they asked him about this, he said, what is the highest, right? The highest is spreading Krishna consciousness, spreading the holy name around, following that mission of Srila Prabhupada. So we need to come together and cooperate. You may think different than me. You may preach different than me. Maybe you don't want to do Harinam, or maybe you need to do Harinam, or maybe you don't want to do certain ways of preaching. Maybe you preach heavy. Maybe someone preaches light. Maybe someone preaches with a lot of psychology. Maybe someone preaches with lots of stories. We should not fight about these things, because some people will be attracted to all these different ways of preaching. So unfortunately, our movement is kind of stagnant. In the West, it's stagnant because we stamped on so many devotees' heads. You can't do this, you can't do that, don't do it this way, do it that way. But there's grassroots. I'm saying the good point is grassroots. Some devotees, like myself, my Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he wrote to me, become a great preacher for this movement. That is the only way I can repay him. As that other devotee was preaching, how can I have an option? I don't have an option, sorry. So I will not be stopped by some people who say, only, roll Giwix, or only, stay in the temple and be quiet and take care of the children. I've done that. I've taken care of my children, and look at them. They're on the front lines of preaching, front lines in the universities, at yoga studios, where things are happening, where people are looking for some spiritual knowledge. My children are there, and I will be right there with them. So you can't stop us. We're Prabhupada disciples. We're not your disciples. So you may have a different philosophy than Prabhupada. Sorry, I can't follow that. It's my duty. And this will happen with many, many devotees. They will come forward. Grassroots. They won't be able, you can't stop the transcendental energy that Prabhupada gave us. No one can stop that. But you are trying to stop it by stepping on, when you step on the grass and you don't water it, you don't nurture it, you don't give opportunity for the grass to grow, then it will be maybe a little slower, but it will still grow through the cracks of the concrete. So as women, sometime you're asking particularly about women, and I'm not saying equal rights like we should fight together. Fighting is useless. Don't be like the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer, I don't know if you know what this is, but in America there's these magazines that just find dirt on the presidents and on the actors and on famous people. They find all the dirt, and sometimes they just make up, like they'll say, Angelina Jolie has 3 heads, or we found, Brad Pitt was born with an extra finger or something. They're just trying to find dirt. So don't be like that Prabhupada disciple women are trying to be like military. I'm sorry, but that's like the National Enquirer. We don't even want to address these things. It's sad that senior devotees in our movement are talking like this, and name calling, putting names on the disciples that Prabhupada who've dedicated their whole life and have been forced to give up their children in our movement at some point in the late 70s and early 80s, and even past that a little bit. Many of the mothers, you're saying be a mother, but many of the mothers were forced to give up their children to the Gurukulas. And I was personally in Prabhupada's room when one mother came and she said, Prabhupada, do you say we have to give our children up to Gurukula? I'm afraid that my child will be beaten, because that's what was happening. I'm afraid my child will become a homosexual, because that's what was happening. So do I still have to give my child? If you say so, then I will. And Prabhupada said, no, I never said this. I never said you have to. I want these Gurukulas to nurture the children. Then he wrote a big letter, stop this nonsense of hurting the children. My heart is going out. There's nothing more than I want than to nurture the future generation as a mother and as a Vaishnav and as a disciple of Prabhupada. We need to nurture the future generation. And sometimes if I have to fight for that, I will fight for that. Against those who are saying all this nonsense, National Enquirer, finding dirt on different people. These devotees didn't want. I have personal friends who are still crying to this day because their children were molested in our Gurukulas. And their children, obviously, they didn't want to be devotees anymore. And now you're criticizing these mothers that they weren't good devotees? You didn't let them nurture the children. At Mother Jamuna, we all know, we all revere Mother Jamuna. She's very saintly. She was one of our saints. Prabhupada loved her. Prabhupada told her, he hit her on the back and said, preach boldly for Krishna. He had her sit in front of him at the Cross Maidan festival and give classes. He asked her to be GBC in Vrindavan, to be in charge. The men gave her such a hard time. It's in her book. She's very polite about it, but it's in her book. And after she passed away, she had to go in seclusion, basically. She had to go. She was forced to go in seclusion. I was there at the time when they asked Prabhupada, what do we do? The men are not accepting me to be able to preach, to be able to lead them, to be able to manage them. The men are fighting me. So I just want to go to a farm and be with one devotee and just do a little seva and deity worship. Prabhupada said, okay, because it's so difficult for you, do this, you have my blessing. She was forced. It wasn't her choice. Then they criticized and blamed her. I was there. You want to talk about women, I can talk about the women's situation. They criticized and blamed her. Oh, she left, she blooped, this was Maya. When Prabhupada gave her personal blessing because she had no elsewhere to go. You didn't give us any other place to go. Some of us stuck it out because of Prabhupada. Only because of our love for Prabhupada, we stuck it out. but you made it very difficult for us. So we forgive and we want to forget, but don't continue this nonsense. Don't continue this nonsense. We forgive and forget, and we'll go on preaching in our own way wherever we can, wherever Krishna will open the opportunities, and he's opening those doors for us. At her ceremony after she passed in Alachua, we had a very nice ceremony. Many God brothers and God sisters were there, and one devotee stood up and said, "I'm representing the GBC, and I want to say that Mother Jamuna has changed the face of our movement." And actually that statement really upset me. And after I went up to him and I said, "How dare you say she changed the face of our movement? You didn't let her change the face of our movement. You put her in seclusion." A great, amazing personality like her with so much bhakti and love and knowledge, philosophy, and so dedicated to Prabhupada and was able to lead in so many ways. You pushed her into a seclusion. You did not allow her to change the face of our movement. Now, please, you change the face of our movement and allow this to open up, preaching mission to open up. Lord Chaitanya, open the storehouse for everyone, man, children, animals. So don't tell us that we can't preach. Thank you. Hare Krishna.